welcome to Fundamentals of Cybersecurity, CSCI150N, Chapter 8, Physical Security. I'm your instructor, Peter Keurig. In this chapter, we will learn to describe how physical security directly affects computer and network security, discuss steps that can be taken to help mitigate risk, identify the different types of fires and the various fire suppression systems designed to limit damage caused by fires, and explain electronic access controls and the principles of convergence. For this video, we'll discuss the security problem, physical security safeguards, fire suppression, power protection, electronic access control systems. So I've often told my students that if I can gain physical control of a system, I can gain access to that system. There are a few circumstances where that might not necessarily hold true, but in most cases, I can gain control of the system. There are tools out there that would allow me to crack passwords if I can physically boot up on a CD-ROM on a system such as a server. Other tools like LandTurtle, which would allow me that if I plugged it in directly on their network to be able to capture traffic on their network, and even better, open up a tunnel, a VPN tunnel, to out through their firewall to me, and they would not be aware that it's there. Unless they were looking for it specifically. So, if I can physically gain access, I can do a lot more harm. So, physical security safeguards, walls and guards. The primary defense against a majority of physical attacks are the barriers that are placed between the asset and potential attacker. So these could be walls, fences, gates, doors, things of that sort. Some organizations also employ a full or part-time private security staff to attempt to protect their assets. And more often than not, security guards work as a deterrent, not as a barrier to somebody doing something wrong. The idea is that, oh no, there is a security guard there, I'm not going to take the chance of doing it, and I've been deterred from doing it. As opposed to, you see in the movies like Mission Impossible, where they get around all the security guards and they do everything they want to do. Security guards are not a good barrier. They might help you detect that something has happened, usually after the fact. They come across some kind of evidence that something happened, or they would scare somebody off from doing something, but they're not good at becoming actual barriers to preventing an attack. Physical access controls and monitoring. Physical access controls means the control of doors and entry points. This includes locks, layered access such as man traps, electronic access control systems such as keypads and badge readers and things of that sort, doors, cameras, and alarms. Convergence. There is a trend to converge elements of physical and information security to improve identification of unauthorized activity on networks. If an access control system is asked to approve access to an insider using an outside address, yet the physical security system identifies them as being in the building, then an anomaly exists and it should be investigated. So it's detecting the anomaly. But actually, I want to kind of come back a little bit on the slide here and look at electronic access control systems, because later in this same chapter they have a little section dedicated specifically to this. Electronic access control systems are badge readers, pin pads, things of that sort. It's basically, this is where we get into the multi-factor authentication. A lot of times it's something you have as well as something you know. Not always. Sometimes it's as simple as you just swipe a badge and you get right in. But your more secure places, it's going to require to do two-factor authentication with these electronic access controls. Okay, so fire suppression. Basically, there are four types of fire suppression out there. There's your water-based, which are your water-based sprinkler systems you've seen. There's halon, which are basically replaces the water with halon gas, which asphyxiates the fire by robbing it of oxygen. The halon actually binds to the oxygen molecules, preventing it from being used and consumed. Then there's clean agent, which are meant to replace halon. Halon's actually no longer produced anymore. But clean agents could be anywhere from CO2 and argon to Intergen and FM200. And then finally, there's handheld. These are the things you're used to seeing around a building that you can use to put out fires. And there's 4 classes to that. There's Class A, which is common combustibles, which you're going to see in most places. B is combustible liquids. These you might see in a kitchen or in a fueling point or something, or maybe next to a generator or something of that sort. C is electrical. This is what you should have in your data center for a handheld. And D is flammable metals, which chances are you're not going to need that from a security perspective. Interesting thing to think about is fire code versus what you want to use. In reality, we all know we want to use some kind of inert or clean agent versus water in an IT center, right? Water and IT does not mix. Water on your stack of servers will, you might as well just let the fire burn because the water will be just as bad to the IT equipment. No, not really. We don't want the building to burn down. But what my point is that in fighting the fire, you're actually causing destruction of equipment. So something to think about. This actually happened to us. So we put in a FM200 clean agent fire suppressant in one of our data centers. And so we met everything as far as the standard goes for fire suppression in a data center by putting that in there. But when the fire inspection came through, they failed us on the fire inspection in the data center. It wasn't because they didn't think that FM200 doesn't work, but the fire code and standard in that particular place where the data center was built requires that all, and I repeat, all fire suppression systems had to be water-based. And there are different types of water-based. There's pre-charged, there's dry pipe, and stuff like that. Regardless of what type, their fire code requires it to be water. So even though we're kind of sitting there like, hey, this is a data center, we got all this IT equipment, water will just destroy everything. They said, nope, that's the fire code here, and so that put us in a predicament that we had to work out with the local authorities. So one thing to think about when you come into the IT situation and you're working with an IT department, maybe to put in a new data center someplace, is when you do think about your fire suppression system, make sure you are in communication with your local fire department where this data center is going to be, and that you understand what the fire code is that they're following. There are some places that will follow a fire code that a clean agent is perfectly acceptable. It just happened to be where we were. They were following a federal standard that had not yet been updated to include clean agents, and so it was strictly water-based at that point. So keep that in mind. Power protection. We kind of touched on this in a previous chapter too, but as you see with security, there's a lot of places where certain topics cross over in multiple chapters. Anyways, with power protection, there's UPSs, uninterrupted power supplies, which is basically a bank of batteries that is supposed to cover you from the time the power on your main power distribution is knocked out or reduced or whatever, we had a brownout or a blackout. It's supposed to cover a short duration, usually 10-15 minutes, of some kind of power interruption or power event. And then what it's supposed to ideally do is transfer over to a power backup of some sort, usually a generator or an alternate power circuit coming to your facility. But in most cases, it's going to be a generator, diesel, gasoline, whatever it is that your organization has chosen for it. Important thing to understand is what is the load of your data center that you're trying to protect. It requires that you know what systems are critical that you want to stay up, which in most cases when it comes to a data center, you want almost all of them. Understanding how much draw they have on power, so that when you do get a UPS put into place, that you size it correctly to provide you enough time to transition from grid power to whatever your power backups are. So if you don't have enough, your data center could quickly drain the batteries in like a minute or two. So you want to make sure you got a good at least 15-minute cutover time, and you want to make sure that your generator backup also provides enough power. So you need to take into consideration what are all the things you want to run off those generators. Do you want just your data center? Well, guess what? That data center also requires things such as air conditioning and climate control. So those systems take a lot of power. You might not put those systems on the UPS because you can last maybe 15 minutes without your air conditioning or the humidity control in the data center. However, if you're going into hours of needing to be on a generator, you need to make sure that all the things that support your IT also are added to that generator. So it really requires a lot of planning on what are the things that you absolutely need to have up and need power for when you go to size a generator and have it installed, and having whoever the electrician is properly wire the right circuits into that generator. Power monitoring, you can buy devices that go inline into your power coming into your facility or into a section of your facility, and it drops and monitors for drops in voltages, the frequency changes from the 60 hertz that normally power comes across the line at, and fluctuations in the current. And then another one, I'm not entirely sure why they put it under power protection. I guess because they're thinking of maybe when they're running near a power supply, but they're talking about cable shielding. How do you protect against electromagnetic interference caused by power? So, for example, if you are running Ethernet cable between two rooms in an office building, you don't want the cable to cross over the fluorescent lights that are in the ceiling. You want to have it away from wherever there's power lines. And if it has to come close to a power line, let's say you have a run between several floors within a building, and they're going to be close to each other, you want to make sure there's proper shielding on both the power and on the networking cables to prevent electromagnetic interference. I'm your instructor, Peter Keurig for Nashville Community College. Thank you for watching.